Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Claire Kirkpatrick, and I'm the Club Development Manager at Motorsport UK. This evening, we have John Clavey of Sapphire Solutions to talk to you about TimingAppLive, which is an app that he has developed for timing auto tests and Autosolos. The app fully complies with the regulatory timing requirements for both of these disciplines. Steve Johnson is also here as chair of the Auto Test Committee and is here to tell you about his experience of the app and provide us with some training of how to use the app as well. So I'm sure John will also mention his other app, RallyAppLive, which to encourage the development of RallyAppLive, Motorsport UK have granted a specific authority to Sapphire Solutions to deploy and refine the system at Motorsport UK permitted rallies. We will be looking to run a separate webinar on this app in the coming months, so look out for that. So before we get started, we have our normal housekeeping. Everybody is muted except for the panelists, but if you'd like to ask questions, then please do so using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I can see someone's already asked a question, which is great. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can throughout the session. The session is also being recorded and will be available for you to watch back in about a week or so. Also tomorrow, you will receive an email link with a link to a survey. This email will be automated through Zoom. You'll have a link to the survey, which would really appreciate your feedback and ideas for future webinars. So we'd really appreciate you completing that short survey. So now I think it is time for me to hand over to John and Steve. Thank you.
Right, well, I'll just do a short introduction before I hand over to John, because he's going to go through the first few slides. For the few people who might not know me, my name's Steve Johnson. I've been around in the sport for over 45 years as a marshal, and I've done most jobs on rallying, hill climbs, auto tests in particular. I also started competing exactly 40 years ago this month. I did my first road rally, and I've been a competitor for the last 40 years quite regular. And I've done all forms of rallying from both seats. The same again for, I've done sprints and hill climbs, and I've also done car trials, as well as auto tests, Autosolos and PCAs. And I've had 30 years as an event organizer, and I help to run. We've got 3 motor clubs. I'm on the committee of all 3 motor clubs up in the Northwest, and we run approximately 12 events a year. So a little bit of knowledge and experience there that I'm happy to share with you. John, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Steve, and welcome everyone. First time I've ever done a webinar, so bear with me. I'm going to read the first bit from my pre-notes, and then I'll try and ad-lib after that. So I hope that everyone finds this evening useful, and whether you have already experienced TimingAppLive or whether you are a newcomer to this solution. First, just a little bit of background on myself. I've been developing mobile applications, now called apps, since 1994 as a business. I developed initially solutions for Symbol Technologies. They developed the barcode, so they have a number of mobile barcode scanning handheld hardware, and I developed the software for various delivery systems, stock control systems, etc. Since I started Sapphire Solutions in 1994, I've developed over 100 different solutions and applications. But more recently, I've been developing live sport scoring solutions, starting with GolfAppLive, which was very much my passion, for scoring, doing live scoring systems for society golf results. So basically the same as Autotest, at the end of a big, large society or corporate day, with 100 golfers coming in and chucking their cards at the desk, someone would have to key that all into a spreadsheet or draw out all the results on a piece of paper and try and work out who the winner is. I then developed a similar solution for other sports such as cue sports and darts. This is a product called Leaderboard. Again, very much I was into the cue sports. I played cue sports at a fairly high level. I'm actually on the national committee for the English Pool Association. And then 8 years ago, I got into auto testing with my local CSMA Boundless Club. After 3 years competing, I was asked by Mike Biss if I would like to run one of their events. I agreed and took this on to give something back to my club, because I'm passionate about motorsport as well now. But I had seen other people and how they would run events using the stopwatches and the time cards, and then having to collate the results, either using a large piece of paper on a board, usually an A1 sheet of paper, or via, some people had a spreadsheet, but again, you'd have to key in all the results from the time cards into the spreadsheet, potentially causing mistakes, transferring the times from the time cards and the penalties from the time cards into the result system. Also, it was quite slow. Sometimes the results would take 30 minutes or longer before you get the provisional results for people to check. So I wanted to cut the time down, get rid of the potential mistakes of the transferring of times and results. And through my experience of app development, I developed the TimingAppLive solution, whereby the results are timed on an app. The results are sent via the internet through to the web database, and via the browser you can view the results, or via the app you can view the results. Hence, showing live results to all the competitors, automatically calculating awards, etc. I also wanted to make the registration and payment system easier, because again, there was various different ways of signing on to the event. One, you would get an email and you'd have to print off a form, fill it in, scan it, send it back. Others had their own online systems. Some had payment systems, some didn't. So I developed, as part of that solution, the entry system, which Steve will go through some of this in a minute. And I recently added things like MOT and tax checking for Autosolos. Entries can be imported and results exported from the web system, the admin system. You can also create email distribution lists and email results out after each event. The system's been running, we developed it, so I should go to the right slide. I developed it back in 2016. Soon after that, I showed it to Steve at Birmingham NEC at early 2017. It was early days then, but Steve took an interest in and came back to me on that. It wasn't until probably 2019 that I made it multi-club. So originally it was just for my own club, but then I decided that this could be used for other clubs, so I made it multi-club. In fact, on Sunday we had two events that took place at exactly the same time, one at Debden and one at Kemble. Each had over 40 cars. and we recorded a total of 1,400 runs on the system concurrently live. I've been reliably informed by the clubs already running the system that has been a considerably benefit in reducing their workload before, during and after each event. Marshals also enjoy the system as it keeps them informed on how many runs are left to time, and it helps them identify the drivers not only by name, not only by number, but name and what cars they're driving. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone, the marshals, the organisers and the competitors who love to see live times. And quite often we see people glued to their phones analysing their times and seeing where they are. Okay, I think I shall head back to Steve to talk about the registration online now. Oh, but one thing I should say first, if anyone would like to take part in the live demonstration towards the end of this, if you can use the online registration for the demo accounts, which I'll show on the next page, and download the app, and then towards the end of the event we'll be able to do that, show you some live results and things like that. So here's the registration screen. You should have had a link from MS UK on your confirmation email. How to get to this screen: you simply fill in all the boxes for the demonstration, auto solo. You can put any number in on the competition license number, doesn't have to be real data, just anything with a star. Tick the box at the bottom and click register your entry, and you can get the app on Google Play or the Apple App Store. Okay, I'll pass you back to Steve.
Well, thank you, John. Going on from that registration screen we've got there, I'd just like to talk you through one or two of the pertinent things that are on there that are very useful. At the top of the screen, you've got an opportunity to install your own regulations as a link to it. If John, if you wouldn't mind putting your mouse where the click here is at the top of the screen, so that hopefully, yep, if you can see where the mouse is and the click here at the top, that means that whatever your event regulations are, you can upload them onto the system, so they're there for the competitors to have a look at when they fill it in. Filling in that form, it's just another data capture form. It's the same data capture that you need for your online pre-event declaration. All that information is the same. So if we go down to the bottom of the screen where the blue line is, John, please. There's the catch-all. When you do anything on the internet now, by clicking here or accepting or moving forward, you agree to the terms and conditions. This also does the same. And for the event organizer, if you go onto the live system now as a competitor, you can click on that, and we've uploaded the current Motorsport UK's pre-event declaration. That changed normally 2 weeks ago. Because I'm running an event in 2 weeks' time, I've had to go through and upload the latest forms onto the system for the events I'm running, because they changed it 2 days before I was going to put my events live. So I have to change everything again. But that's one of the issues we're at, because we're in such a flowing time at the moment. But it does give you that opportunity. So filling that form in, you also have a similar form for your marshals. If you can move forward a screen, John, please.
Before we move on, we have a couple of questions about the form. One person has asked about the permit number not being on the form, or should it be on the form?
It doesn't need to be on this form, but it's on the event regulations, and where it says click here at the bottom, you can install that there. Onto the permit numbers can be installed onto that pre-event declaration. And if you look at the ones for this event, it's actually been put in as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that whatever the permit number is, you can put them in there. If clubs wish to have loads of paperwork and emails back between competitors, that's their choice, but this captures all the same data.
Thank you, Steve. It's
Okay. We're going on to the Marshal's application. This is the application for today. Nobody needs to fill this one in. It's just the same data capture form, what you need. But one of the strong things about this system, it has a role at the bottom for the Marshal. So if we move to the next screen, please, John. These are all the different roles. So you can have all your marshals allocating themselves into what role they normally do. And particularly for the timing app, we've got Timekeeper Stopwatch and Timekeeper TimingAppLive, because it's a different skill set. And lots of people are now learning to use this. And you need 1 or 2 timekeepers who have knowledge of it to help you run your event safely. Because at the moment with COVID, we are trying to keep the number of marshals at an event to a minimum. So this information is very, very useful to the event organizer. Thank you, John. Next screen, please. People are asking about the cost of the hardware. At the moment, it's all free, is this information. The hardware you need is your smartphone, and John is asked for donations, and it's recommended between £1 and £2 per car as a donation, but there's no hardware you need to buy. You just can use your own smartphones, and everything else is done on internet. So it does make life rather easy. This is just an example. It's an event that's coming up, and at this moment in time, we've 21 event marshals signed on to the event currently. This is what it was when I did a snapshot 3 or 4 days ago, and we've closed marshals for the event because we've more than enough to run the event safely. We do not want to have too many marshals, but it gives you an idea of you can got people doing different types of tasks on your motorsport event, so that you know as an organizer what you need to beef up before your event. So that does help. And going on to the next slide, please, John. Because I run a few events with 3 different motor clubs, we have our own little event management system. We set competitors into 4 groups, and we run a drive, rest, marshal, rest system. So we allocate all our competitors into 4 separate groups. The beauty of doing things through John's system, I can just bring in the exported Excel spreadsheet into our event workbook, and then I can make up the groupings tab, the timekeepers check sheets, and the scrutineering for the scrutineer to see, all from the one workbook. And it makes it incredibly powerful as an event organizer to do these things and make the event quite simple. You can pre-plan quite a lot. We actually allocate all our marshalling positions prior to the event, and it probably saved me 2 days' work as this system in pulling in all the information together. We opened our event regulations at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night 2 weeks ago. By 11 o'clock with 43 entries, and by 6 o'clock the following day the event was full. It's a really useful system as an event organizer. So that's an overview of it. There is a lot of admin work for the 1 or 2 people from an event organizing team they need to set up beforehand. We are not going into all those details of this webinar because for 80 to 90% of attendees, it's not the information they would need. It will be too confusing. This is concentrating on the timing app and the interface, what you see at the motorsport event. But the other elements of the admin can be done quite easily with a Zoom meeting with John and to go through it. And it's quite intuitive is the way of doing things. September last year, our under 17 motor club ran the event with a jot form to take all the entries, and we uploaded the entry list into the Sapphire Solutions and just used the timing system. For the Boundless by CSMA event at Lim in 2 weeks' time, we used the whole system through Sapphire Solutions to do the event entry and we are going to use it for timing. And because it was interfaced, I didn't have to upload into the system. So it saved a significant amount of time and double working. And that's how I look at it. This is not the only system out there. There are some other systems out there as well. But we found it worked well for our motor clubs in the Northwest, and we're starting to use it more and more, or we are using it more and more. It's great. There's no need to be worried about COVID issues, because if people time it on their own mobile phones, there's no need to have paperwork between people. It makes for a very COVID safe system, and everyone can look at the results instantly on their apps. So what I'll do now is pass you back to John, who's going to talk through the nuts and bolts of the timing app system as you will do on a control. And I suggest please register for the event if you want to use it at the next session of this webinar, so that you can use your form. If you register for the event and have it loaded on, it takes minutes to download and register, and I strongly advise that you do it. Thank you.
So before John starts, I'll just say we've had a couple of questions in about the admin side. No, it's fine. About the admin side. I'm going to suggest that we won't answer those now, because we're going to focus more on the timing side. But if people are interested in a separate webinar around the admin, we can look at putting that on at another time.
Yeah, there's an important one there about if somebody enters and signs on but does not make it on the day, how do you determine non-starters? Well, that's a question that came up at the SD34 meeting a little while back, Claire, and you took that back to Simon Fowler. And that was quite simple. If they've signed on and entered the event, but are a non-starter on the day due to illness or due to they did not start the event, so the insurance has not started, so they are not counted as a runner because they have not started the event. That was the definitive answer from clubs and competitions.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Claire. All right, so I'm now going to go through and demonstrate how the app side of the things work. And as Claire and Steve said, I'm quite happy to do one-to-one Zoom meetings to explain the admin system, which is fairly straightforward, but would put this webinar for it would just take too long to do on this webinar at the moment. So some benefits, which I'll go again talk about later, and you'll see the difference. Obviously, it's very good for the COVID distancing. There's no paperwork changing hands. It can also be used to do the time test on RadioAppLive and integrated with that. You can use the available marshals that you have for an event. So you could literally run the event with 1 or 2 marshals. But if you've got more marshals, then they can chop and change with the phones quite easily, and give them more of a rest time and enjoy the event more. And it uses the technology everyone owns. It works on Android or iPhone. So most people have got smartphones nowadays, which obviously keeps the cost low. It's easy to use, and it appeals to competitors who like the modern technology. Makes events easy to organise, and it can run multiple events at the same time, as we proved on Sunday, because it uses the Ionis servers, which are very powerful and can be used anywhere in the world. It can also be used as a training system, which Steve and I have discussed for a future event. So competitors and marshals can both interact with the app. A nice little picture from yesterday. Here we go. So anyone can download the app, and anyone can click the live button there. Pick any event across the country. It will just show all the live events or future events, and with that you can see a live leaderboard. At the moment, I'm just showing the screen for the minimum one. The default is a detailed one, which shows the actual times of each run instead of the overall time. And you'll see any penalties, cone penalties, line penalties, or wrong tests indicate there. Or indeed no runs or maximums, depending on how many runs they've completed for that test and whether they've exceeded the maximum time or had more than one wrong test if you're dropping one run. For the marshals to use the app, you simply log in and use the input code to log into each club. So each club has got a unique code that they use to log in, and that code can be changed if need be. For the demo, I believe it's 5678. Is that right, Steve?
Yes, that's correct. I've actually just texted that back to somebody on the chats. Well,
okay.
I'm answering some chats.
All right. Okay. So now on to how the Marshal uses the app. So the first screen that comes up would be the which timing system are you using. We're going today going to just be using the app timing, but you can also link it to the FDS T-Box timing beams, which you saw in that picture, and which we used at Bath and which we used at Brands Hatch before Christmas, and that's an optional extra. Or indeed, you can use manual timing. So if you're using this for something like a sprint and they've already got timing equipment, you can just literally input the times and use this just as a result system.
That's actually answered one of the questions on the Q&A, is that one? Thank you, John.
That's good. And then we've got 5 options on the next screen. I'm trying to make it not sound complicated, but there's different scenarios on how people time an event. So we've got start and finish, which is the typical auto test scenario where one marshal times the complete run from the start to the finish. You've got then distant start and distant finish, where one marshal does the cars starting and one marshal does the finish. The start one picks the driver, allocates the time, and the finish one grabs the time and allocates it against the driver and allocates any penalties. There's also an administrator can log in and add penalties to the last run of any driver if those penalties have been missed for some reason. Or as we did on Sunday at Bath, we had an administrator sitting in a caravan listening to the walkie-talkies, and any cones or lines or wrong tests radioed in were allocated to the run that way. If you're not using the timing equipment, but you're using multiple phones for the start or the finish, it's important that those phones synchronize with the same time, exactly the same time. So it then goes on to this screen where it shows the current time on the phone, and we can advance or retard the phone time. It doesn't literally change the time on the phone, but it advances or retards the time that we are going to record so that all the phones are in complete sync with each other, so you don't get any discrepancy. If you load this on 2 phones, you'll be able to see that, and you can adjust it until you get the same time. And then you select the test. I think we've got 2 tests allocated, so you'll just see A and B today. Okay. Once you pick the test, you'll be able to select the driver, and you should see a full list of your names. Some may not have start numbers yet. I've got to allocate those in a minute. You pick your name from the list, and you press the big green button in the middle to start the time. You can also use the volume up and down buttons on the side, so you can hold the smartphone as if you're holding a stopwatch and press them with your thumb or forefinger to start the time. And indeed on Android, you can actually rig up a remote button that will plug into the headphone socket, and that can also be used to start and stop the time. Once the time is running, you'll see the clock will go red, and you'll see the counter counting in normally tenths of seconds, but it can be set to whole seconds or hundredths of seconds depending on what event you're timing. And once you press the button again or click the volume up or down to stop the time, it will give you the run time. At that point, it'd be in the light blue. And then you allocate any cones, lines, wrong test or clean run. Once you start to allocate those, the main display goes green. You can press cone penalty more than once or line penalty more than once and allocate multiple line and cone penalties, or you click wrong test, or you hit clean run, and then when you're finished you hit the save button, and that will send the time and the record, if you like, with the driver, what run it is, what test it is, what time, what penalties. It sends it all up to the server, where it will automatically generate the results. So that's the basic mode of start and finish one Marshal doing the complete run. I shall briefly go over the other method, which is the start and the finish being separate, with two Marshals, one doing the start, one doing the finish. This allows you to have multiple cars on a test, as in an auto solo, you might have 3 or 4 cars running at the same time. So the start Marshal very simply picks the start, picks the driver, again taps the box. He's got the exact time of day at the moment displayed as a counter at the bottom, so he knows that syncs up. Once he's clicked that, you'll see the time of day, and they click save. So it records the actual time, the now time, and sends that to the server. You can also abort a run as well. If you hit abort, you can hit yes or no on that. That time is then sent to the server and ready for the finish Marshal to pick that up and work out the complete time for the test. So the finish Marshal, by picking finish on the selection, takes them to the screen. When the car crosses the line, he taps the button or the volume buttons. It then gives them the time of day that they crossed the line. They press this button again to select a driver. It will give them a list of the drivers that are out on the course, i.e. those drivers that have started and are waiting for a finish time. Once they pick the driver, it will confirm the driver, the car, the test, the run, and the overall run time. Again, you pick cones, lines, wrong, test, clean run, and save. And then it takes you back to the first screen again. And that is as simple as it is. I think most Marshals pick it up within about 30 seconds. And they do enjoy being able to see a name against a number, what car, etc. It makes their life easier to know that they're timing the right person.
It certainly helps when you're on the start line and you say hello to the driver. As a Marshal, you actually have the driver's name in front of you on the phone. It makes it a lot more personal, does that, and it does actually benefit us that. Yeah.
It also shows you a number of runs left to complete up there. So we know we've got 23 runs left on this test. So they know when it gets down to 0, they've completed their job and they can either hand over or go for the lunch break. So we're going to hand over to Steve again now.
Well, what I'm going to suggest before we move on from where we are, we've got a couple of questions which we could possibly answer now. One of them, we've mentioned about sprint and hill climbs. Whilst this timing app isn't authorized for sprint and hill climbs, if they've got an authorized timing system, they can still use this system by manually inputting the timing, can't they?
Yes, they
And
can.
this will work to a millisecond as well, your system,
It
if it
will.
goes in.
Yep. So you can literally, you just key in the times instead of doing the start and stop, basically, and it sends the results up and does all the calculations for you.
Yeah, there might be the opportunity if the timing beams work with the phones for this to be authorized, but that's down the line, and it depends on those specialist committees and the timing committee.
Yeah.
There's another question here which I think you can answer, because I wouldn't be able to answer this. It comes from Kevin Moore. What happens if a phone service is lost during the event?
Right, that's a good question. Yeah,
Very good question.
The app actually has its own internal database where it will store any times and penalties. It will then, if it doesn't manage to send it at that particular time, so the phone network was having a little glitch, the very next time that comes through, it will send it and the previous one, and any that aren't any unsent ones will be sent at that point. And then before you log out and close the test, it'll also know that if there's any not sent to that point, it'll try and send them then. So there's like a double fail safe there.
Yeah, I'd always recommend, if at all possible, to have a check sheet with a start and finish Marshal, so that you can still have a paper backup. I'm old school and I'm still going to use it that way until I've really got 100% confidence, but that's me, because I'm old school.
What we did when we first ran this at many events, is I suggested that each car had their own check sheet that they wrote the time of penalties down themselves, and then they can just double check at the end. You know,
that's custom and practice. What happens now on most Autosolo and Autotest events, the driver keeps their own. They're the first auditors of the results of the drivers, because they know what time they took on the test. And I've had very few drivers come back and said it's gone in the system wrong, if any. There's another question here that you'll be able to answer, John. For me and Rogers, he says, can you run multiple courses at the same time? I think the answer is yes to that, but you know it better than I.
Yeah, in fact, we typically run 2 or 3 tests at the same time. Yes. So each marshal has to make sure he picks the right test. That's a typical error that Marshal makes once in the blue moon. They forget that if you're doing like 3 sets of 3 tests, it'd be A, B, C, D, E, F, and they pick E instead of the F or something in the afternoon and start recording on the wrong one. But in the admin system, we can easily correct that just by moving them over to the correct test once it's noticed.
There's another question here from Martin Pullman saying, can you put the penalties in during the run, or do they have to go on at the end?
They can be done during the run as well, yes. Using the admin penalty function, let me just go back up to that screen. So we've got add penalties there. They can be added at any time. So that basically takes them to a list of drivers, and you literally just pick the driver. It takes you to what looks like the finish screen, and you can add cones, lines, or wrong test at that point. Now, if you do that before the finish, when the finish marshal does the finish time, he'll see the penalties on there already, and you just hit save. Some can be done afterwards as well. So if they finished the run, a penalty wasn't added for some reason, the administrators can just go in there. So you have a third marshal wandering around, just adding those penalties via the app, or it can be done by the website as well.
What I've tended to do is I've always had the marshals on site with some sort of communication board to tell the start and finish line there's been a penalty, so it's quite obvious for people to see on tests, and the finish marshal adds the penalty at the finish, because that way the competitor can be informed at that same time that they've had a penalty on the test. It tends to be fairer for the competitor.
That's the best way.
That's the best way.
Yeah.
Just going back to chats, there was another one here. You don't need to, there's a question here from Jim Allen about tapping the button can sometimes record twice. All you need to do is clear the penalties and start again.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
If you put
Yeah.
too many penalties in, clear the penalty and then just put back in one again.
Yeah. So if you picked that one and put 2 cones in, you just click clear run and then click that one.
And then go back to put 1 cone in.
Yeah.
So that would work.
Yeah.
So I think that's covered most of those at the moment.
Okay, I'm just going to allocate some entry numbers for people that have registered during while I was talking, which is very nice of them. I think we've got
it looks like we've gone up another 20 odd entries for this next session.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So that means that you'll hopefully have it loaded on your phone now. If you've registered for the event and you've downloaded the app to your mobile phone, we'll go into the next slide.
Okay, let me just click on that. Oh, sorry, go back one.
If you go back 1 slide now, if we go back to this slide here, hopefully you've now got on your mobile phone the app. The app has a little bit of a course of an Autotest, and when you click on that, you'll get the screen that you've been looking at before. That's the screen you should get as you're looking at it. So if you've got that screen, you now need to use your login code of 5678. Can we go? Thank you. If we could stay on, please, John, for a second.
Sorry, that was me.
Yeah, if we can stay on that one for a second.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if people are following us, they've now got a screen that asks you which timing to use. And we want you to select the app timing. Then it shows you've only got 1 event to select because it's a demonstration event. Because you use the new unique code, it only brings up the code to that motor club now. It only brings up those events for that motor club that are on the system. So it's easier, it's filtering out the different events, so it makes it easier for you. So you can click the demonstration event. That gives you a choice of screens. And what we're going to do, we're going to keep it to what is normally used with a standard stopwatch. You time an event from the start line to the finish line with a stopwatch. And that's all we're going to do with a mobile phone. So you're going to click start and finish. That's the timing that you use. And on this particular event, we're going to time test A first. So please select test A. And you'll have a lot of numbers there and drivers and the cars. John's been very busy numbering people up. So whatever name you use to register on the app for the event, because I know there's 1 or 2 pseudonyms gone in there. So whatever name you use, would you like to select yourself for that position for test A, run 1? Hopefully, if you've selected the correct thing, you've got that up in front of you. I know it's very difficult to see on the phone, but you've got it lit up in green, ready to start, and you've got your name and the car number and everything loaded onto your phone. If you haven't, you can watch this again on video catch-up and go through it that way. It's sometimes quirky. We miss things out and don't get it right first time. This is why I do encourage people to practice with it. And 1 or 2 people are practicing on this training session now because they're going to be timekeepers at my event in 2 weeks' time. So it's really nice for these people to come along and do some practice before we go and do it with the live competitors. So that's great. So hopefully you'll enjoy the next little session where we'll go into actually timing some cars on a test. Can we have the first test, please, John?
Sure. Okay.
So this is a small auto test, or it's a production car auto test or an auto test is this, but we're going to call it a solo. It doesn't matter. It's the purpose of timing the car from starting to finishing. You normally time the car when it crosses the start line between the two markers that you're using. And when you come to the finish line, as the front wheels cross the finish line, that is when timing ceases. We're using stop astride for all these events. For safety in Autosolos and Autotests, I always go for stopping astride the finish line. So it means it's safer. You can have drive-throughs with a box afterwards if you've got plenty of space. That is totally acceptable. But each club and each organizer does it to what they do in their area. You don't have to do it any one particular way. As long as it's safe, that's all we're bothered about. So the first pair of buckets, the car is in between the base here that you can see, and when the front wheels pass the next pair of buckets, so you're getting a consistent start point, that's the start of the timing. And the finish is when the front wheels cross the finish line, which I think on this test are going to be the buckets hidden by the Marshal's hat, and the other side of it there's another bucket there. So if you're ready on over the green, as soon as the car starts, you can time the test and see how things go. Over to you, John.
Okay, I will say I've speeded the video up a little bit in the middle, so you get a bit of a Benny Hill moment, but bear with it, and I'll slow it down towards the end. So if you're ready, buttons, 5, 4, 3.
Again, just a little bit of information. This cannot be an Autosolo because it's on a loose surface. Autosolos can only be held on a sealed surface, but an Autotest can be held on a loose surface. They can be held on grass, and you can have tighter turns on an Autotest. An Autosolo doesn't have very tight turns. And hopefully you've hit a finish time there. It should be in the 30s or thereabouts, the finish time. And for that particular run, I didn't see any penalties whatsoever. So I'd like you to allocate a clean run for that driver, and then it'll turn green with the screen, and now you can press save. If you press save, that data has now gone to the system. Your screen will have gone back to a full list of people. So you can now load up your next driver as a Marshal. You've just timed that driver, given them a clean run. If you were at the event, you will show the time to the competitor, tell them the time, socially distance, of course, 2 meters away from the driver, because that's the COVID regulations now, but it means that you don't have to be close to anybody. So can I suggest you load on the next driver, which is yourself, for test 2.
I will also point out at this point that these videos were taken a while ago, and this is actually a PCA event, so there are passengers on these first 3.
Yeah, that's right. It's just a demo. Claire, have you got a question?
Well, I'm just going to say there's a few people that hadn't quite registered, so I've been sending them the link. So we may need to just check registrations, that everyone is ready before we do our next test.
Okay.
We've got 2 more come in.
There we go. Good.
Okay.
There's 2 more at the top there. If you want to allocate them a number, John.
I shall allocate them a number. Bear with me. Yep. Can't remember what number I'm up to. I'm going to call them 55, 56, I think.
That would be reasonable, I think. So if everybody else can load in themselves again into the timing app, so that you've got a green screen and you're ready to tap to start and finish, you should be on test A, and now you should be on run 2 to whatever name you would put yourself into the event as. So hopefully we can time the next test now.
Next one, yeah. Okay.
On this one, it's a grass Autotest. I think it might be a grass PCA, but I'd like you to observe how the cones are at the start line. You've got them the car lined up on the first pair of cones, and the timing line will be the second pair of cones by the bumper. So to do it consistently, we normally do it when the front axle crosses those lines. So if we can give us a countdown when you're thinking of starting, John.
Okay. This will be 5 seconds from now. Here we go. This was a junior driver. I think it was his first full event. Nephew of my friend.
Well, it's great because juniors can start doing this at 14 years of age with an experienced Autotester as the passenger, so it's very helpful.
He's very quick for a first event.
That must be the Benny Hill moment.
That is, yeah.
And I think that's the finish line, is that where he stopped at. Now, for the observant of you, it looks like that car is slightly skewed, and one wheel on the passenger side has actually passed the finish line, but the driver's wheel is short of the finish line. Sadly, I would allocate a finish penalty to that because they haven't got both the axle across the finish line. A bit harsh on a newcomer, and I'd possibly give them a gypsy's warning and be friendly to them on the first event. But for consistency and playing a straight bat, I would allocate a line penalty to that competitor. So every time your screen is on, would you like to allocate a line penalty to that competitor and then save it? Hopefully, if you've saved it, you're back to selecting your next driver. Please select yourself again for your third run, and John will move us on to the next video.
Okay, video number 3. Are we ready?
If everybody's ready, you've got the video up. It's quite simple. Again, just a green screen. You're going to tap it when the cars brake. I think this one is actually sat on the start line, is it, John? Or is another one in front of it?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's sat on the start line. So as soon as the car moves off the start line, start your timing.
Okay.
The main thing is for the start marshals to be consistent and do it for the same for every driver. If we can get consistency, that's all we're aiming for. Because on a stopwatch, you can time to 1/10 of a second quite accurately, and these smartphones can do it the same way as well.
Have you finished?
And we had a finish on there. The cars stopped to stride, but I actually saw the car hit a cone during that test. Some of us might have missed it, but I'd like you to allocate that driver having a cone penalty for the third test. So you can give them 1 cone penalty and then press save. Once you've done that, we shall go into the next test.
I think we have someone else waiting to be accepted, so I don't know if you could just add them to so they can join in this last.
Sure.
Okay, let's have a quick look at that. Yeah, do you want to add?
Give them a number. Yeah. Oh, we've got.
Give them a couple of numbers.
Let me just allocate them some numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like we've got 60 now signed on.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. 57.
Big auto test going. This is good.
59 and 60. Okay, they log in now, they should get numbers. Oh, another one's joined.
Yeah.
As I said that. 61.
Yeah.
Okay, it's
while
not
we're
in.
doing that, we have a couple of questions about the screen on the phone being live and how you might need to change the settings in your phone so that it doesn't.
Yes, you should really, if you're using your own mobile phone, it's very good to put it into flight mode. I haven't had it when somebody's rang up one of the timekeepers when they've been timing, and the timing still carried on in the background, and they had a phone call to deal with, and I think they couldn't multitask, so they ended up aborting the run for the driver and giving them a rerun on the test. But again, if you're using your own phone, put it into flight mode. Some clubs provide dumb phones on a Wi-Fi network. It's entirely up to the motor club how they want to do things. With these COVID times, it's a lot easier for people to use their own smartphone that they handle, and it doesn't take a great deal of data at all. It's very minuscule from what John tells me, what it uses for the day. But you might want to have a battery backup. So you've got a spare battery in your pocket and you put your phone on charge if you're using it for a long while.
Yeah, that's right.
So someone's just said, does flight mode turn off data connection? But
The flight mode would, yes, but you could actually just do it in flight mode and then at the end of it send all the data. But yeah, I think flight mode would turn the data off. Yeah, but I would just turn the volume down and just reject any calls.
Don't answer a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's unfortunate it's at the finishing line, then unfortunately it's going to have to be a rerun. But yes.
we've had also someone said, could you allocate them extra runs if they've used the demo system before? Don't know if everyone is.
They'll be okay. They'll be okay. They can just put extra runs in, and the admin can sort it out afterwards, so it's not an issue.
Brilliant.
Yes, if I think a few people have got a bit trigger happy and put a few runs in already, you can carry on putting runs in. It will just keep counting the runs up. It will turn the screen purple. That's just a warning to the Marshal to say that possibly they timed the wrong person on a run somewhere. So typically, if for the PCA where you're sharing a drive, you might have a father and son, you know, Bert Smith and Alan Smith, and you've timed the father rather than the son. But what we can do afterwards is we can take that fourth run or fifth run and allocate it to the other driver very easily at the end and correct that problem. So just carry on timing, don't worry about it, and it will come up in the results.
Yeah. Okay, if we can go on to our fourth run here. So hopefully you'll have the fourth run up for those who's been doing it from the start. If you've just joined us, you'll have whatever run you've got on. It doesn't matter. You're only doing it for practice, and this is all for good fun, and it'll make it easier for those of us who's coming to my event in 2 weeks' time for our club's event. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask you to count us down, John, for the start of this, or how it goes?
Yeah, I think it's about another 5 seconds from now. It seemed a shame to speed that one up because incredibly fast even in normal motion and amazing driver.
Yeah, that was a proper Autotest, as we call it, or a classic Autotest, as they are now known in many areas, because it was a lightweight mini saloon, and with them wheels, it looks like 14 or 15-inch wheels on even, for that matter, at the front end. So goodness knows what power plant there's in that mini. But whatever time you recorded for that car, for the purpose of this training or this session that we're doing now, I saw that the driver did not complete the correct route. So I'd like you to allocate a wrong test to that driver because it was signalled by a marshal that it was a wrong test. So as a timekeeper, I'd like you to now allocate a wrong test for that driver and save your result. So once you've done that, if you can you select yourself for the final run of this demonstration live, and we're going to the event that you used this weekend where you actually had the timing gear on it. John, do you want to say a little bit about that before the start?
Yes, this is an optional extra we added recently as part of the initiative for streetcar, that we could do some automatic timing using the timing kit from using the T-box system. So we got like an infrared beam across the start. You can only see the start beam on the tripod there, and there's another one over hidden behind the other start thing. So as soon as they cross the line, so all the marshal has to do at this point is allocate the driver. As soon as they cross the line, it gives them the time and they just save it. And the same at the finish, it automatically gives them a time. They pick the time because there could be several cars on the track at the same time. So they pick the time that they've just crossed, pick the driver from the list of cars that are actually out on the course, allocating any penalties. And as you'll see at the end, we had a live display as well showing the time and the penalties.
This is very, very similar to what the ECM systems use on stage rallies. Anyone who's done timekeeping on stage rallies, it's a very similar system, and it practically mimics identically to what the ECM system uses for stage rallies. And it's a very COVID safe system of doing things as this and whatever. So
the equipment was actually designed by two ex-employees from TACUR, who set up a company called FDS, and they provide this timing equipment to all sorts of sports, dog agility, sprints, and circuit racing and karting, etc. So it's well tested. It's even been used for world record attempts and things like that.
Yeah. So this is just interfacing that equipment into the timing app. For 90% of Autotest and Autosolos, you don't need this equipment, but it's an option for those people that want to go to the nth degree. And I'm a big believer of keeping it simple, because a lot of marshals enjoy using a stopwatch and they enjoy the app just as good as a stopwatch. So for this one, we're going to time this competitor on the start line. Would you like to give us a countdown?
Yep.
Please, John.
5 seconds from now.
Sounds like the sound is quicker than the picture. If you have a look at the walk across to the finish line now, you'll see the timing display in the right-hand side of the picture. So when this car's coming into the finish, I'd like you to be ready to stop it, your timing. That first shot there was a finish across the line, and I actually considered that that car, when it finally stopped, had gone into the finish box. In the Northwest, we always ask cars to stop astride the finish line. We don't give them the error of a runoff box. So I'd like you to time that car as if it had a line penalty on the finish line, please. So whatever time you got, please put a line penalty against that car, because when I saw it, it didn't look like the back wheels were across astride the middle line. They'd gone past it. So I would have allocated a line penalty, but some parts of the country may time them differently. But for consistency, that's how we time in the Northwest, and that's what I'm using for this session. So time that car with a line penalty and send it to the system. That will allow you now, when you come out of the timing app live, you can actually look at those live results for this demonstration event now. So if you close down your mobile phone by going back, close the test when it says yes or no, go yes. you'll get a screen up then that offers you to go back again with the 2 tests on it. So if you go back from there and keep going back until you get to the original event, original front page. On that front page, go to live timing for the demonstration event, and you'll see on there now the results of 60 marshals timing 60 drivers.
I'm also going to share the website version as well, just so people can see.
While you're sorting that, John, I might just ask a couple more questions.
Okay.
So Ian Rogers says that they have the T-Box receiver. Can you run 2 courses from the same T-Box?
You can't, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, the T-Box will only link to one phone, and but it will link to multiple timing beams. So, but you would need at least 1 T-Box per test for it to run properly.
Okay, and then we've had a couple of people ask about if a marshal presses finish too early, can you restart the timer? And also someone asking if the marshal inadvertently starts a watch, can the test be aborted for that run?
Yes, you can abort the run. There's aborts at the top corner. What was the first question, sorry?
Sorry, if a marshal presses finishes too early, can they restart the timer? Or would that?
They can't restart it, no.
No.
They'd have to abort and then rerun.
Yeah.
Again, there's another little thing that we haven't covered. The fact that when you press the button on the phone as the car starts, you cannot press it again for up to 2 seconds. It does not take a second hit. So once you've hit the button and it started, the car started running, it won't stop until 2 seconds has elapsed. It's a fail-safe that John's put into the system to stop people starting like you would do with a stopwatch if you double dip the switch on the stopwatch. So again, when you start the car, you can't stop the watch for 2 seconds, and that's a fail-safe to try and stop you hitting it in error. And it does actually work quite well. I used it at an event 2 weeks ago at Kerborough, where 2 marshals, myself and another marshal, set off 59 cars 4 times into the test site. The test was about a minute long, and we actually had it finished in 3.5 hours because there was a slight overlap, and we could have 1 car coming on to the finish as the next one had already set off because the paths didn't cross near the finish. So it made things a lot easier to run the event and a lot quicker.
So
sorry for messing about, but I was just allocating the automatic awards.
So we've had someone notice that although everyone's timing the same cars, that the results are different. I've not had a chance to look at the results there, but I imagine most of that is due to the fact this is a webinar and there's going to be delays in people's videos. I think that's probably going to be the main reason for that.
People choose when did the car start. There's probably a good 2 seconds error on the start. When did the car start and when did it not start? And the same again on the finish, because of the quality of the videos we were using. And to make it not take up too much data and too much file size, we slimmed them down a bit so they were a bit picturely. But again, you're going to get that error. It's a lot easier when you're watching cars on site, and it will be easier if people have had practice before they come on.
I also noticed a number of people that had done extra runs before we even started, so had a little play. So some of those were not genuine times.
And I'm right in thinking that you can set the result system to drop the worst score. of each test?
Can, yes, yeah.
Yes, that's a very powerful part of the administration of this system. You can set your own cone test penalties. Whilst the blue book has now gone to 5 seconds in the blue book, all those penalties for cone tests, cone penalties and line penalties and the wrong test times are open for the clerk of the course to choose what they feel is best for their event and the customers who are coming to their event. Quite often you need to look at the maximum time, because once a test gets over 40 seconds long, 20 seconds as a maximum time is not a big penalty. You might want to be looking at 30-second maximum. If it goes over a minute on the course, you might want to be looking at a 40-second maximum time. Again, novices may never see their time all day if you set it too tight. Don't think of the experts all the time. Think of the newcomers, the new customers to the sport. They like to see what time they got, even if they took 3 weeks.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions. I'm very aware that we've run over our hour, so
we are answering a lot of questions as we've gone through.
We
but,
have,
yeah.
Good. How do you clear a penalty was one question, but
how do you
clear a penalty?
Okay, so if you're using the admin mode of the app, you can just literally go into the last run for that driver that was allocated pending your mistake, and then hit clear run and save it, and that'll clear a penalty. Or very briefly, I'm going to show all those runs in admin mode. So these are all the runs that were recorded today, 270 of them. If I decide that isn't a wrong test, I can click on that and get rid of that, etc. Or you can put it back in again. So I can edit it out. You probably can't see that very well, actually. Don't we just scroll a bit bigger font? So you can see for each run, for each user, if I edit one particularly, whatever that is, you can change the number of the run, you can change the test, you can change the driver, and you can change the time. So it's all configurable. So that's the start and finish time of that. That's time of day, if you like, in milliseconds, and that's the actual time. And obviously it rounds down to the nearest tenth, so that will be a 31.9. And you can see when it was recorded, what time it was recorded. Some of these were recorded early doors before we got to the actual event. Okay.
I've just had a question in from somebody that you might want to answer. I think it's for somebody who's into autocrossing. Would this system work on an autocross event when they have 4 cars start at the same time, but they get different? Would they get different finishing times because they wouldn't all finish at the same time?
Yes, you could. You'd
have to have 4 separate timekeepers, wouldn't you?
4 timekeepers, yeah. But yes.
Or if you were using the beam system, they could all start on the same time as they start, and then you'd have 4 separate beams breakages, and then you'd allocate it accordingly. But it would all depend on the timing rules for autocross and whether this system could be used or not. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah. There was another query that I think is worth mentioning for the auto testing. It has mentioned about having maybe 2 marshals on the start line, timing alternate cars. That is a system that is used by many events, and it does happen. And I've even seen it where they've had 3 marshals on the start line, and they time every 3rd car. Because the tests are that long, you've got 1 finishing, 1 in mid-test, and 1 ready to start. So 3 timekeepers can be used. And the only error is the difference of the pressing of the app, as it would be if you were using 3 different stopwatches. But that is acceptable at the events.
Okay, just going to go back to the the webinar screen.
How do you declare the results final? Someone's received results from an event which were different to that was on that app, so they were just querying.
Well,
Okay. At the moment, there isn't a mode to declare them final. That has to be done manually.
yeah.
But we can add that. It's
Yeah.
a growing system, an evolving system. So I'm always
Mm.
up for new ideas and things to features to add. Yeah.
What I tend to do at the events I've used it, I've asked all the competitors, anytime they find an error, don't wait till the end. Let the events team know by texting the events team or just verbally saying to them, keep 2 meters away and say, look, can you just check such a test in such a time? And what I have said is the events goes provisional as soon as the last car finishes and all the results are in the system, providing nobody has had any queries and nothing has changed. It's final within 30 minutes of that last time of the car at the finish.
Yeah.
But if there's a change, you have to give an opportunity for 30 minutes unless everybody's in agreement that they're happy with the results.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's no different to any other event. When you come to the finish, you have to give everybody 30 minutes protest time.
Yeah.
Unless everybody there says, no, we're happy with it, we want to go home. That's then the competitor's decision.
Am I sharing the screen again?
Is there about 3 slides for you to finish off with, John?
There's just a couple, yeah, just to recap. So future developments. At the moment, I've got a Facebook community group page for each of these apps.
Do you want to put the screen up, John? Because what's up at the moment I'm looking at is an event admin screen looking at it.
Okay, sorry.
I'd also just say that you can print out the results, can't you?
Yes,
For finals to be signed and everything.
that's available if people want to go do paper things, but there's no need for printing them out at the event because everybody who's got the phone at the event have got the results on the phone. They can be printed out if you've got the facility to print at the event. If you're taking a printer with you, you can send them to print.
Bear with me. Okay, so yes, I've got a Facebook community for each one where I welcome suggestions for improvements. And it also, people have used the system. There's quite a few now that have used this system. And, they've become experts, if you like, once they've run on 2 events. So each area will have an expert that I can point you towards, help you assist, with your first event. But I think you'll find it very easy that after one event, you'll be able to run it no problem on your own. And I just want to grow the adoption as this solution makes sense. That's the Facebook group pages, very simple. And my contact details if you want more information or a one-to-one Zoom meeting with me. I'm more than happy to go through, set the Apple account, go through all the details.
That's great. Thank you so much, John and Steve. I think there's a few questions about the admin side of things. So
Okay.
we'll, what we've done in the survey, that's a question about if you're interested in it. So say yes, and we'll get a date and arrange that as long as enough people want it, which sounds like they will be. And we'll share those details with everyone who has signed up today and wanting that information. So
I've got a couple of queries that are on screen now. There's one from Nigel Abdullah saying, what's to stop a driver writing down the wrong time then proceeding, protesting his time, in other words, cheating? Hopefully, if there's been a check sheet done by the organising team as well, they'll have a copy of what the time was that went to the app. But I would audit the times and have a look at it just for chance there's been an error. And if that test has been run once or twice before, hopefully the runs of that competitor will be very similar to his other times. So you'll be able to do an element of research into the alleged protest. But I wouldn't like to use the word protest. I would just use the word query. And then quite often, if you've been allocated a penalty from a marshal who's a judge of fact, it's life, you take it on the chin. Sometimes you get a penalty, sometimes you don't get a penalty. And marshals are a very valuable commodity. So it's life, you have to live with it quite often, unless you know there's been an error made. And then the competitor gets the benefit of the doubt if you believe you've made an error. The one about remote penalties can be added. Yes, that can be done. I think best practice, if you can see the start and finish, it's better for the start and finish marshal to add it at the finish and tell the driver they've had a penalty on that test as well. It's always fairer to inform the driver at the finish line of the penalties and the time, so they can do that record. There's another query here from somebody who about a competitor not completing all the runs. If you have a competitor that breaks halfway through and they've completed over half the tests of the day, they can be a finisher on the event. So that's down to the admin to actually add in the maximum times for those tests. It should do it automatically.
It does do it automatically if they've done more than half and you keep them active. It will give you no runs, which are effectively maximum for those runs. If they've done less than half the event, if you turn them off as take the active flag off so they become non-active, it takes them out of the results. Yeah,
so there's two ways, but again, I had an issue at an event where there was only one competitor in the class and he broke it on the test 7 of 9. No other system would do it any differently. You've still got to add in a refer time for that competitor as a maximum time. And that's something that you would do, whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it was on using a calculator and a paper record, or whether it was this system, you would allocate the maximum time for the driver for those tests. But the admin can do that. There's a question here from Graham Hall. I think the 12-car events should be using the Rally app, not the timing app.
Yeah, so there is, as I said at the beginning, there is RallyAppLive, which Motorsport UK have granted specific authority for it to be used for Motorsport UK permitted rallies under development trials. So if you want to use RallyAppLive, then those events will be reviewed under the development trial. You can contact John and Sapphire Solutions for more information. And the hope is that once that system has been refined during the trial period, then the regulations may be amended to permit the general use of RallyAppLive. And for a Targa, someone, yes, you mentioned Targa, didn't you? So again, yes, talk to John, Sapphire Solutions about it. Currently, Targa rallies are run under road rally regulations. Therefore, if you wish to use RallyAppLive, then it will be part of the trial, the development trial.
Yeah, we've got a question here, one here. If somebody has started the event and done one test, then breaks the car, they have actually started the event and they can be listed as a retiree. You don't delete them from the results. You just put them, they've started the event. You have to pay the fees for the permit for those people, but they have started the event. You can't delete them from the event and from the results. They're just a retiree. That's a correction which is correct, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I also see that someone asked about the wrong test maximum. Yes, it does use the quickest time in that test, plus 20 seconds or whatever you said it to be.
Yeah. Again, that is something for event organisers to be very, very careful with what they choose and look at who the customers are on the event.
Someone's mentioned about rainy days, and yes, the phone may not be waterproof. They can be in their car, or they can have an umbrella. They can just need to protect the phone from the rain, basically.
Many events actually use gazebos now and strap them down to cars. The main thing is, if you are using a gazebo, ensure you've strapped it down and it will not blow away, because there's too many events where gazebos are blown away on events where they haven't been strapped down, and those are competitors' gazebos as well as event gazebos. I think a lot of the questions that are coming in now are looking like they're going more specific to what a general time in events has been. So it may be prudent to possibly email John directly to answer some of those questions.
Okay. Yeah, John Blackwell, actually, one last one. He said, do I input the car number at the start line? You just pick the driver as we did in the demo, even if you're using the T-box system. You just pick the driver, and then as soon as they cross the line, it triggers the time, and you just press save. One of the benefits of the T-box system was that when we were down at Brands Hatch and it did rain all day, the guy doing the finish could sit in the car and take the recordings rather than having to stand across the line and get them wet.
Yeah. Another quickie, it's a very important one that's just come out. If you're using your own phone, you need to ensure that your screensaver doesn't come on for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because when you're timing a car, you don't want the screensaver to come on, and you don't want to have to keep logging in to operate it. So again, these are little things that you've got to look at with your phone. Ensure you don't get any phone calls coming in by muting it or turning the volume down. And ensure the screen doesn't go blank while you're timing.
Yeah. And lastly, but not least, Alan's question about if cars finish too close to the previous car. If you're using the timing beams, yes, it does store the times. You can have multiple times on the screen, and you can just pick the times after the two cars are finished and allocate them to each driver.
I think we've answered a lot of questions there looking at that.
We have indeed. I think in total we had 94 questions we've answered. That is fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much. We will stop there. If you have any further questions, you can either email John, or if you email club.development@motorsportuk.org, I can always forward on questions and queries as well.
Yeah. And Claire, can I thank everybody as well for coming to this event? It's been a fantastic opportunity to share what we've trying to do as best practice around the UK, and to hopefully ask more people to have a look at it. You don't have to use it. There are other systems out there, but this one has been found to work by people who are competitors, and it's been put together by somebody who became a competitor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Claire.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for developing this app. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great opportunity for clubs as well. And thank you for everyone for watching, and an hour and a half of your time this evening to find out more. That is brilliant. Thank you all.